The FBI had spent nearly 17 years searching for one man, thousands of agents, millions of dollars, more than 200 suspects, countless dead ends. Yet the country's most dangerous bomber remained invisible. No fingerprints, no DNA, no eyewitnesses, only handmade bombs that appeared without warning and disappeared into history after they exploded. By 1996, investigators believed they were hunting the smartest killer America had ever faced. Then, deep inside the forests of Montana, a small wooden cabin quietly became the center of the largest manhunt in FBI history. When federal agents surrounded the cabin, they weren't sure what they would find. A heavily armed terrorist. A network of accomplices, perhaps even explosives rigged to kill anyone who entered. Instead, the door opened. Standing before them was a thin, bearded man wearing worn-out clothes covered in metal dust. He looked less like America's most wanted criminal and more like a forgotten hermit. Inside the tiny cabin, agents discovered something even more astonishing. A fully assembled bomb hidden beneath the bed. 40,000 pages of handwritten journals, encrypted notebooks, detailed bomb-making instructions, and enough evidence to solve every attack that had terrified America for nearly 2 decades. But here's the strangest part of all. The FBI didn't catch Ted Kaczynski because of advanced forensic science. They didn't track his fingerprints. They didn't trace his bombs. They didn't even find his cabin themselves. In the end, the man who ended the longest manhunt in FBI history was Ted Kaczynski's own brother. And it all began with 56 pages that were never supposed to identify their author. Long before the FBI knew his name, Ted Kaczynski was known for something entirely different: genius. Born in 1942 to a working-class Polish-American family outside Chicago, Ted displayed extraordinary intelligence almost immediately. By elementary school, teachers realized they weren't dealing with an ordinary child. His IQ was eventually measured at around 167, placing him among the most intellectually gifted people in the country. His parents believed education was the key to a better life. They encouraged him to read constantly, challenged him academically, and watched with pride as he skipped 2 grades. At just 16 years old, Ted entered Harvard University. To most people, it sounded like the beginning of a remarkable future. To Ted, it felt like the beginning of something else. For the first time in his life, he wasn't the smartest person in the room. Surrounded by students from wealthy, prestigious families, he struggled to fit in. His worn clothes, working-class background, and painfully shy personality made him an outsider almost overnight. The quiet teenager who had once enjoyed camping, mathematics, and classical music slowly withdrew from everyone around him. Classmates later described him as distant, silent, sometimes openly hostile. He rarely spoke, rarely smiled, rarely left his room except to attend lectures. The isolation only grew after Harvard. Ted completed a doctorate in mathematics at the University of Michigan, producing research that impressed some of the country's brightest academics. Soon afterward, the University of California, Berkeley offered him a position as an assistant professor. At just 25 years old, he became one of the youngest mathematics professors in the university's history. By every conventional measure, Ted Kaczynski had achieved the American dream: prestige, respect, a brilliant career. Yet after less than 2 years, he abruptly resigned. No public explanation, no farewell. He simply walked away. Friends assumed he was suffering from burnout. Others believed he had grown tired of academia. The truth was stranger. Ted had become convinced that modern civilization itself was the problem. Technology, universities, governments, corporations. He believed they were slowly destroying human freedom. So he abandoned them all. Deep in the forests of Lincoln, Montana, he built a tiny wooden cabin with no electricity, no running water, and almost no contact with the outside world. To most people, it looked like a retreat. To Ted, it was the beginning of a revolution. And before long, that quiet cabin would become the workshop of America's most elusive serial bomber. For nearly a decade, Ted Kaczynski lived in almost complete isolation. He hunted rabbits, collected scrap metal, read philosophy, and, hidden inside his tiny cabin, he quietly taught himself something entirely new: how to build bombs. His first device was crude. Made from ordinary materials that could be found in junkyards and hardware stores, it lacked the sophistication of his later creations. But every failed attempt became another lesson. Every explosion made him better. Unlike most criminals, Ted never rushed. He treated each bomb like a mathematical problem. Every component was carefully handcrafted. Every screw was filed by hand to remove manufacturing marks. Every wooden box was carved from scratch, so investigators couldn't trace where it had come from. He even fabricated fake clues, deliberately leaving behind misleading evidence to waste investigators' time. In 1978, the first bomb was discovered outside a university in Chicago. A campus security officer picked it up. Moments later, it exploded. The injuries were minor, but investigators immediately noticed something unusual. The bomb didn't resemble anything they had seen before. It wasn't military. It wasn't homemade in the ordinary sense. Whoever built it possessed remarkable patience and technical skill. Then another bomb appeared, and another. Some were left at universities. Others were mailed to professors, researchers, airline executives, and computer store owners. The victims seemed completely unrelated. No ransom demands, no political organization claimed responsibility. No warnings arrived before the attacks. The randomness made the case almost impossible to understand. The FBI eventually linked the bombings together and created a special task force. Internally, the investigation received the code name Unabomber, short for University and Airline Bomber. Before long, the media shortened it even further. The Unabomber. It became one of the most feared names in America. As the years passed, the bombs became increasingly sophisticated. The explosives grew more powerful. The triggering mechanisms became harder to detect. Investigators found almost nothing at the crime scenes. No fingerprints, no fibers, no usable DNA. Not even commercially manufactured parts that could be traced back to a supplier. Each bomb looked as though it had been built by someone determined to erase every possible clue. The FBI interviewed thousands of people, followed countless leads, and assembled one of the largest investigative teams in its history. Yet every theory collapsed. Because they weren't hunting an organization, they were hunting one extraordinarily disciplined man. If you had been leading the FBI investigation in the 1980s, where would you have started with the victims, the bombs, or the bomber's psychology? Let us know in the comments. While agents searched for physical evidence across America, the most important clues weren't hidden inside the bombs at all. They were buried deep inside Ted Kaczynski's own past. As investigators struggled to understand the Unabomber's motives, they kept asking the same question. How does someone this intelligent become a serial killer? The answer, they believed, had to be somewhere in Ted Kaczynski's past. One chapter stood out more than any other. Harvard University. In 1958, 16-year-old Ted was still trying to adapt to college life when he was approached by renowned psychology professor Dr. Henry Murray. Murray wasn't just another academic. During World War II, he had helped design psychological assessments for intelligence agencies. In the years that followed, his research attracted support from organizations connected to the U.S. government, including projects that later became linked to the CIA's controversial behavioral research programs. Ted volunteered for what he believed was a harmless personality study. Instead, he became part of an experiment that lasted nearly 3 years. It began with a simple assignment. Each student was asked to write a detailed essay explaining their deepest beliefs, personal values, and philosophy of life. Ted took the assignment seriously. He poured his thoughts onto the page, exposing ideas he had never shared with anyone else. Then everything changed. Instead of discussing the essays with fellow students, participants were brought into a brightly lit room where a trained interrogator aggressively attacked every belief they had written. Nothing was off limits. Their intelligence, their morals, their identity, their future. The goal wasn't debate, it was psychological pressure. Electrodes monitored their physical reactions while the sessions were recorded on video. The humiliation didn't end there. Over the following months, participants were repeatedly forced to watch recordings of themselves being verbally dismantled, again, and again, and again. Some former participants later described the experience as deeply disturbing. Others said it stayed with them for decades. Researchers reviewing the records concluded that Ted reacted more intensely than almost anyone else in the study. Naturally, this has fueled one of the biggest debates surrounding the Unabomber case. Did those experiments create Ted Kaczynski? The evidence suggests the answer is far more complicated. Many other students participated in the same project. None became serial killers. Psychologists generally agree that the experiments alone cannot explain what Ted eventually became, but they may have intensified feelings that already existed. His distrust of authority, his social isolation, his growing belief that powerful institutions manipulated ordinary people. Whether those sessions changed him forever or merely reinforced ideas already taking shape may never be known. One thing, however, became unmistakably clear. After leaving Harvard, Ted no longer wanted to understand society. He wanted to fight it. And eventually, he decided that words alone would never be enough. For 17 years, the Unabomber remained nothing more than a ghost. Then, in 1995, everything changed. Not because the FBI uncovered new forensic evidence, not because a witness finally came forward, but because Ted Kaczynski wanted the world to hear his voice. A typewritten letter arrived at major newspapers claiming responsibility for every bombing. Inside was an extraordinary offer. Publish his manifesto, a 35,000-word essay titled Industrial Society and Its Future, and he would permanently end his bombing campaign. The request sparked fierce debate inside both the FBI and the media. Government policy had always been clear: never negotiate with terrorists. Yet investigators faced an impossible choice: refuse to publish it and risk another innocent person being killed, or publish the manifesto and hand a nationwide platform to America's most wanted terrorist. In the end, they made a decision that would change the investigation forever. The manifesto was printed in newspapers across the United States. Millions of Americans rushed to read it. Most expected the writings of a madman. Instead, they found an articulate, carefully argued attack on modern technology, industrial society, and the loss of human freedom. To many readers, it was disturbing. To some, surprisingly persuasive. But to FBI linguists, the manifesto represented something far more valuable than a political statement. It was evidence. Because, unlike a bomb, words carry fingerprints of their own. And somewhere, among those 35,000 carefully chosen words, the Unabomber had unknowingly revealed the only clue that could finally expose his true identity. The FBI hoped someone, somewhere, would recognize the writing. They never imagined that person would be the Unabomber's own family. Hundreds of tips poured in after the manifesto was published. Most went nowhere. Then one call changed everything. It didn't come from a detective or a scientist. It came from a man named David Kaczynski, Ted's younger brother. At first, David wanted nothing to do with the investigation. His wife, Linda, had been the first to notice something unsettling. As she read the manifesto, she kept hearing Ted's voice. The unusual phrases, the rigid logic, the obsession with technology. It sounded less like a political essay and more like one of Ted's old letters. David resisted the idea. The brother he remembered was painfully shy, a brilliant mathematician who loved books and hiking, someone who cried when animals were hurt, not a man capable of mailing bombs across America. But the more he read, the harder it became to ignore the similarities. Certain expressions appeared almost word for word in letters Ted had written years earlier. The arguments followed the same relentless style. Even the grammar and punctuation felt unmistakably familiar. David found himself facing an impossible decision. If he stayed silent, more innocent people might die. If he contacted the FBI, he could destroy his own brother forever. For weeks, he wrestled with that choice. Finally, he handed investigators dozens of Ted's old letters. FBI forensic linguists immediately began comparing them with the manifesto. The results were extraordinary. The same rare vocabulary, the same sentence structures, the same unusual way of building logical arguments. It wasn't enough to prove Ted was the Unabomber, but it was enough to convince a federal judge to issue a search warrant. What would you have done in David's position? Comment 1 if you would have reported your own brother to save lives. Or 2 if you believe family should never betray family, no matter the circumstances. Within days, FBI agents quietly surrounded a small wooden cabin hidden deep in the Montana wilderness. After 17 years, the longest manhunt in FBI history was finally coming to an end. On the 3rd of April, 1996, FBI agents quietly surrounded Ted Kaczynski's cabin near Lincoln, Montana. There would be no dramatic gunfight, no high-speed chase, no final explosion. Investigators knew they were dealing with a man who had spent nearly 2 decades building sophisticated bombs. If he realized they had discovered his identity, he might destroy every piece of evidence or disappear into the wilderness forever. So, the FBI chose deception. Agents approached the cabin, pretending to be land surveyors. When Ted stepped outside to speak with them, tactical officers immediately moved in. The most wanted man in America surrendered without resistance. But the real breakthrough came only after agents entered the tiny wooden cabin. Inside, they found exactly what they had hoped for. A fully assembled bomb hidden beneath the bed, already prepared for its next victim. Hundreds of chemicals, homemade tools, disguises, detailed bomb-making instructions, and perhaps the most valuable discovery of all, more than 40,000 pages of journals, coded notes, and personal writings documenting nearly every bombing he had committed over the previous 17 years. Even more astonishing, Ted had left behind the key needed to decipher his own encrypted journals. Those writings became the final piece of evidence linking him to every attack. Facing overwhelming proof, Ted eventually pleaded guilty to avoid the death penalty and was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Until his death in 2023, he never apologized for the people he had killed. Instead, he continued defending the ideas expressed in his manifesto. Ironically, after spending 17 years defeating fingerprints, forensic science, and one of the largest investigations in FBI history, Ted Kaczynski wasn't ultimately defeated by a bomb. He wasn't defeated by technology. He was defeated by language. The very manifesto he believed would inspire a revolution became the document that exposed him. And the person who recognized it wasn't an FBI profiler. It was the one person who knew his voice better than anyone else: his own brother. Sometimes, the smartest criminal doesn't make a mistake at the crime scene. Sometimes, he makes it with a single sentence.